Well, hello. You made it to, or I should say, through the four options lecture. Options lecture number one, introduction and nomenclature of option contracts, at about an hour. And then the second hour, that was a 2-for-1. The second hour in the second lecture was basic options positions, as you see here on the screen. That was lecture two. Let's just put that there for you, in case you finding yourself want to go back and review. And that means you made it through lecture three, which was about stock positions with options, stock plus options, lecture three. And you made it through lecture four. So congratulations. Now, if you have not made those through those lectures, then maybe you shouldn't be attending or listening to this lecture, because what I'm going to do here is we're just going to go real quickly through now all 9 strategies you're held accountable for. So as you can see here, I've organized it a little different. I kind of warned you not to get too worked up about the numbering. The numbering system is just me trying to help you understand how many things there are. And sometimes when I'm teaching class, I do it 1 through 6 this way, because those speculative strategies, what they have in common is that we don't have the stock. We might end up with a stock due to, because of exercise, but we don't start on the stock. We're just speculating on the stock price. And, we said those are speculators, and we have hedgers. That was lecture 3. So, I did it lecture 1, 2, and 3 in the order I did, because, the SIEs were held accountable for lecture 2 and 3. They're not held accountable for multiple option strategies. So hope you find the review helpful. We're just going to go through these things. Now, if you want to use this as a review on your own, you can simply just hit the pause button. I'll tell you when to hit the pause button. You can try and answer the questions and then hit the resume key, and you see if you got them right or not. Wait, let's clean up the slide. So that we're going to review real quickly. This is a review. This isn't a lecture. This is just going through the strategy. Is our 4 basic option positions. We have 2 types of contracts, calls and puts. You can either buy them or sell them. And so that means we have 4 basic option positions. And if there's a lot of different ways to think about options. So you're going to have to find something you're comfortable with, and be careful you don't have too many voices. I mean, as long as you're coming up with the right answers, who cares, right? So if you're not doing it the way I'm suggesting, you're not following my process, that's fine. Just as long as you can tell me break even, max gain, max loss, bullish or bearish, however you go about it, that's fine. That's fine. So we had developed a matrix. We said, if we have 2 types of contracts, calls and puts, and you can either buy them or sell them, we said we end up with 4 basic positions, and we had developed what we call the options matrix by way of reminder. And that options matrix looks something like that. I kind of like that matrix, because, we said if you just get this one quadrant down, by the way, if you just get the one quadrant down, like, for example, if you just get this quadrant down, you know that this is going to be the opposite, right? This guy's dream is this guy's nightmare, or vice versa. So I had suggested the matrix, and, if you memorize the matrix, and I say, what can you tell me about a short call? You say to him, when you're short the call, you've received the premium. You're obligated to sell the stock at the strike price. You're bearish. You want the stock to go down. And your max gain is the premium. Max loss is unlimited. And the break even is strike price plus premium. You may not have any clue what you just said, but it's technically correct. It's technically correct. All right, here's the first of the 9 option positions you're held accountable for. And there's a lot of ways to proceed. And I had suggested that one way you might want to proceed is by underneath the options leg, right? What are you looking at? You are looking at a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. And I had suggested that maybe you want to proceed by orient yourself on the matrix and saying, okay, well, on the matrix, where am I? In terms of the matrix, I'm in that quadrant right there. I'm long a call. What is the break even? Call up. To be right when you buy an option, you got to be right about 3 things. You got to be right about direction, how far, and timing. And so you got to cover your out-of-pocket costs. If I really want to teach you options, I'd make you buy one. And once you were out of pocket, you'd figure out pretty quickly. What the break even is. Nobody does things to break even, but the break even is strike price. Let me get a, probably should. Let's go ahead and use our text thing. Strike price plus premium equals the break even. And in this case, that is 118. So if you paused it and you are now resuming and you're saying, did I come up with 118? That would be correct, right? Now, we also want to know, where do we want the Apple stock to be in relationship to the break even? Because nobody does things to break even. Nobody does things to break even. Whoop. People do things to make money. And so what I'm hoping is that the Apple, let me get my notation bar out of the way. So I am definitely a bull. I'm definitely a bull. So I want the stock to be above 118. Maximum loss. Well, I hope at some point you're not struggling that when you buy an option, the worst case is Apple here is 110 or lower and the contract expires worthless. Now that sounds like a bad thing, but that's actually a good thing because, if you bought the Apple stock, you could lose even more than that. So the worst case is it expires. So the maximum loss. Now be careful on this. You can either, they're not going to give you the test 9 points or $900. They'll give you one or the other, but the max loss is 9 points. And this is one contract, and each of these contracts governs 100 shares. And so the max loss is $900. What is the max gain? Long calls sound pretty good. How with limited risk would you like unlimited reward? How for as little as $800 would you like to control thousands of dollars worth of stock? I mean, a long call sounds pretty decent. The maximum gain is unlimited. So you have limited risk and you have unlimited reward. Pretty cool. Now, every question you do on the test is going to end with either the contract got exercised, the contract got traded, or the contract expired worthless, right? So let's just do this in test phraseology. Your customer goes long one Apple, December 110, call at 8, when Apple's at 112. Who cares? Doesn't matter where Apple's at when we do the trade. So, I do my setup. I paid out 9 points. And they say at expiration. Now, remember, one thing you can do is you can simply memorize your break even. And you can just compare wherever the stock is to that break even. And that's one way to proceed. But, you can simply, if I say at expiration, Apple's 126, I just made that up. You can simply memorize the break even and say, okay, well, that's 8 points in the right direction. So I made $800. But, if it's expiration, Apple's 126, we're going to buy the stock at 110. We're going to sell it at 126. Well, it looks like Dean needs some more coffee. That's an 8 there. And we made 8 points. Let's look at some different phraseology they might use on the test, some different phraseology. So again, they say your client goes long, Apple December 110 call at 8. When Apple is 112, who cares? And now instead of saying at expiration, they say several weeks later. Apple's at 126 and your customer closes out at intrinsic value. He closes out at intrinsic value. You're going to do an offset here. Now, again, you can simply compare 126 to 118. That'll work every time. But now we close it out and it's going to be 16 points. So we did our opening purchase at 8. We did our closing sale at 16. Now on real world, there'd be some time value here, but test convention, they say you close it out at intrinsic value. Please note, if Apple was at 112 and you bought the stock and Apple went to 126, that's a pretty decent return. That's 14 points. But, if we took that return, it's nowhere near a double of your money. Right here, you doubled your money. You bought a contract that's 8, and now the contract's worth 16. That's a double. So another reason people buy options is leverage, making a little money do a lot. Okay, so let's review. Break even is 118. It's bullish. Maximum loss is the premium, and max gain is unlimited. Unlimited. Well, every contract has two parties. Every contract has two parties. And so here's the other side of this contract. Whoop. And again, what I like to do is my convention is before I do anything is I like to, take the contract and underneath it, right, what am I looking at? What I'm looking at here is an obligation to sell the stock at the strike price. I don't know if it's helpful. I think of a person who writes an option contract as a potential victim. And nobody's going to agree to be a potential victim unless they give you some money. And so here, indeed, I collected some money. I have a little bit of a cushion. I'm selling the volatility. It can move against me, and I'm still going to be okay as long as it doesn't move too far against me. So, here. No, there's no graphing. There's no graphing on your exam. But, some people are visual people. So my break even, how far can it move against me? My break even call up is strike price plus premium. It's the same break even whether you're long or short. It's just a matter of where you want it in relationship to that break even, where you want it in relationship to that break even. And so the break even is 118. Nobody does things to break even. Nobody does things to break even. Here, I have an obligation to sell. Anytime I'm selling the stock, I am a bear. And this is a bearish position, meaning I want Apple ideally to be 110 or lower. So this contract would expire worthless and I could keep the money. That's what I'd like to be able to do, is keep this 8 points. And I'll get to keep the 8 points if the stock is 110 or lower. So my maximum gain is the premium. Let's put that in there. And again, it won't be both points or per share, but that's 8 points. On one contract governing 100 shares. And so that's $800. And then maximum loss, guaranteed test question. If I'm wrong about this thing, oh my goodness, if I'm wrong about this thing, once Apple goes above my break even, I start to lose money. There's a finite supply of Apple, potential infinite demand. And so guaranteed test question, this thing has unlimited risk potential. When you agree to sell stock that you don't own, you have unlimited loss potential. I can't imagine any draw in which we don't ask you to recognize that a naked or uncovered call has unlimited loss potential. So let's review break-evens 118. I'm a bear. Maximum gain is the premium. At some point, I hope you're not struggling that anytime you're on the short side of the matrix, you're a potential victim. Best case is nobody victimizes you and you walk with the money. You get to go neener, neener, neener. Maximum gain is $800. Maximum loss test question is unlimited. Now, if I offset my obligation to sell with a choice to buy the stock at the strike price, I would no longer have unlimited loss potential. What I might strongly want to consider is taking part of my money and putting in a ceiling. Maybe I want to consider buying a 120 call. So I can say, okay, well, worst case now, is I buy the stock at 120 and I deliver at 110. And maybe I just want to play between those two prices. You know, might want to do some construction. I might want to do some construction and put in a ceiling. I have a floor. I might want to put in a ceiling. And so let's leg into a spread. Let's leg into a spread. Remember, a spread is when you're long and short the same type of contract. So this is just a lot smarter. This is just a lot smarter than doing a naked call. And the reason it's a lot smarter is because now I have offset. And again, I told you the way I like to do this. By the way, I'm labeling this number 6 because this is a spread. And that's how we started. I'm just legging into a spread here. And what I like to do is kind of say, okay, what am I looking at? I'm looking at here an obligation. And this is what we had on the previous slide, an obligation to sell the stock at the strike price. But now, being the smart guy that I am, I said, you know what? I think I'll offset my obligation with a choice, because now I don't have unlimited risk. I have a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. You know, options are about floors and ceilings. And so I'm legging into a spread here, legging into a spread. So first test question, can you recognize that as a spread? A spread is when you're long and short the same type of contract. So that's test question number 1 about a spread is, can you identify a spread? If you can't identify the spread, you're going to be in a world of hurt because, you know, you won't know how to proceed after that, right? So the spread is long and short. What we're spreading, by the way, is the difference in the premiums. Now, the next thing you've got to be on be able to do on your test is, once we've determined that this is a spread, the next thing we got to be able to do is determine whether it's a credit or debit, a credit or a debit. A credit is more money in than out, and a debit is more money out than in. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to net the premiums. And so this is 8 in, and this is 2 out. And so when I net those premiums, this is 2 out, and this is 8 in. We establish that this is a 6-point credit spread, a 6-point credit spread. You know, anytime I collect money, the best case is I get to keep it. And so let's put that there. So our max gain is 6 points. Now, but by the way, pay attention here. My max gain is 6 points, but that 6 points is on 10 contracts, each governing 100 shares. That's actually $6,000. You know, but as I said, I highly recommend you do things on a per share basis. So we have determined that this is a credit spread. The next thing we want to be able to do on the exam, once we've identified a spread and got credit, is determine whether we want the contracts to expire, or do we want the contracts to be exercised? So let's see, if the contracts expire, that would be wonderful news, because I would have more money in than money out. In fact, I just illustrated that indeed 6 is our max gain. If the contracts expire. Now, by the way, I think you're kind of a jerk of a customer if you say, well, Dean, had we just done the naked calls, we would have made $8,000. I said, well, yeah, but you would have been taking all kinds of risk. You know, we're saying we want to play between here and here, and then we don't want to play no more. Right? Now, the next thing we got to do is determine, do we want the difference in the premium? So let's just clear this up again. So here is, I'm just setting this thing back up. We got 8 here. We got 2 here. We've determined that this is a 6-point credit spread. We've determined that that is our max gain. We've determined expire. Now, the hardest part to get is this idea of widen or narrow. And you don't really need to get it, because credit, expire, narrow goes together all the time. So once you get credit, if on the exam you tell me you want the contracts to expire and you want them to narrow, the difference in the premiums, you'd be right every time, every time. But what we're referring to is when we did this spread, the difference in the premiums was 6. And so when I go to offset this, I got to have something less than 6. Now, if I can close this out for, for 4, I'm going to make 2. That's the hardest part to get, and you don't need to get it because it goes together all the time. Once we get credit, we go credit, expire, narrow. We'll be right every time. If, for example, Apple is 111, I just made that up, and I close out at intrinsic value. I close out at intrinsic value. When I did the spread, the difference was 6. Now it's 1, and that's why I made 5 points. That's the hardest part to get. Don't need to get it because credit, expire, narrow goes together all the time. So we have determined that this is a credit spread. We have determined that we want the contracts to expire. We've determined that we want the difference in the premiums to narrow. The next thing we got to do is determine the gain and the loss. Test taking trick, whatever the gain and the loss are, they add up to the difference in the strikes. So on your exam, you can get rid of any choice offered to you that doesn't add up to 10. Now, of the 2 numbers that add up to 10, we already have one of them, where we've netted these premiums and we've determined that this is our max gain. And so what we're looking for is what is our max loss? What is our max loss? That's what we're kind of looking at here and trying to determine what is our max loss. And one thing we should know is that whatever the gain and the loss are, it adds up to the difference in the strikes. There's 10 points to be made or lost here. So it'd be bad form on your exam to take anything as a potential guess that does not add up to the difference in the strikes. That's the whole point, by the way, of a spread. That's the whole point of a spread. Is I'm saying I want to play between 110 and 120, and then I don't want to play no more. I mean, that's the whole point. I'm putting in a ceiling here at 120. Instead of having 8, remember I had 8, now I only have 6 here. 5, 6. And I'm saying I want to play between here and here, and I don't want to play no more. That 120 is my ceiling. So my max loss, remember this from grade school, 6 plus something equals 10. My max loss is 4 points. Now on your exam, don't pick any 2 numbers that don't add up to 10. That was 2. P.S. If you don't get that, oh my goodness, if you don't get that, then you're going to have to memorize that the maximum gain and a maximum loss in a credit spread is the difference in the strikes less the net credit. I just think it's easier to say, well, there's 10 points to be made or lost. I collected 6, so I can lose 4. But however you get there, you need to get there. As we said, these 2 numbers, whatever they are, add up to 10. So it would be bad form to take any number. By the way, that's the gain. Let me put those plus signs there. So we know those 2 numbers are. That's the whole point, by the way. I want to play between here, and I don't want to play no more. So we have determined this is a spread. We've determined it's a credit spread. We've determined we want the contracts to expire. We've determined that we want the difference in the premiums to narrow. We've determined that the max gain adds up to 10, and we got 6 already. So that's our gain, and so the balance is our loss. So 4 points is our loss. By the way, once you get the menu done, then you can think about it. Don't think about it till you get the menu done. Don't be thinking about this until you get the menu. But once you get the menu done, then you can think about it and say, okay, well, worst case is I'm going to buy Apple at 120 and deliver at 110. I lose 10 points. I got 6, so I lose 4. But don't think about it to get the menu done. So we're still working the menu. The next thing we got to do is we got to determine where the break even is. Now, test taking trick again, it would be bad form for you to take any choice offered to you that isn't somewhere between 110 and 120. Whatever the break even is, it's got to lie somewhere within this range. Now we have a nice mnemonic to remind us about how to get the break even in a spread, and that stands for call, add to the lower. And so the way we're going to get the break even, I want to give us a bigger font here for this. Is we're going to take the lower strike. Now let me put it down here. Lower strike, which in this case is 110. And we're going to add the net premium. Doesn't matter whether that's a debit or credit, whatever that is. In this case, 6. And we get 106 is our break even. Or 116, excuse me. Right, the way we did that is we took the lower strike and we added the net premium. And so the last thing we got to be able to do in a spread, let's see here. Is the last thing we got to be able to do is determine bullish or bearish. But before we do that, it makes sense, by the way, visually that the break even here is 116. Right? Because that's the whole point of the spread is I'm going to play between here. There's my ceiling right here. There's my ceiling. And there's my floor. And so I'm playing between here is the market price of the apple. Now, last thing we got to do is determine bullish or bearish. And the way we do that is the larger premium dominates the position. The larger premium dominates the position. So in the matrix, we got to figure out where we're at. And so we're an 8 over here and we're a 2 over here. And so this is a bearish spread. Meaning I want Apple to be below 116. All right, so there we legged into a spread, and that was one of the strategies you're held accountable for. And by way of reminder, we legged into the spread because we knew that this was kind of foolish, right? That was foolish. And so we took about our 8 points and we bought that higher strike just in case. All right, here's our third position and our basics, our long put. And again, what I like to do is, get comfortable with what I'm looking at. And what I'm looking at is a choice to sell the stock at the strike price. Then what I like to do after I do that is I like to orient myself on my matrix. And in terms of my matrix, I'm right there. So when I'm long a put, I've paid a premium. I have a choice to sell the stock at the strike price. My max gain is break even to 0. My max loss is the premium. My break even is strike price less premium. So break even, call up. If you only remember one thing about options, call up, put down. And when you buy an option, particularly speculative option, we said when you buy a speculative option position, you're buying volatility. You're buying here downward volatility. That's what's going on here. And so you're saying that Apple's going to be, by the way, to be right, you got to be right about 3 things. You're saying Apple's going to go down. You're saying that it's going down at least 8 points because you got to cover your out-of-pocket cost. You got to cover your out-of-pocket cost. And you're saying all this is going to take place between now and the third Friday in December. And so the break even is going to be, let's put that in our thing here. The break even is going to be 110 minus 8 equals 102. That's our break even. The way we got that is we took the strike price minus the premium. And so that's our break even. Nobody does things to break even. Now, at some point, I'm hoping you're pretty good at knowing that when you buy an option position, the worst case is you lose it. Boy, I can't tell you how many people who probably wish they bought puts on GameStop instead of shorted this thing, right? Because whenever you buy a call or you buy a put, here we're buying a put. So remember that, by the way. What I mean by that is remember that on your exam, I don't have to say long. I could say buyer. I could say owner. I could say holder, whatever you're not prepared for. But one of the great things about buying an option position is that if you're wrong, you're just going to lose your premium. If, Apple here is 110 or higher, if Apple is 110 or higher, the contract is going to expire worthless. And so that sounds like a bad thing, but that's actually a good thing, right? So the maximum loss is the premium. So let's put that in there. The maximum loss is the premium, which in this case is going to be 8 points We're talking about one contract, and that contract governs 100 shares. And so that's going to be $800. Now, on your exam again, they're not going to give you a choice between 8 points or $800. It'll be one or the other. It'll be one or the other. And so $800 is the maximum loss. I don't like that because it's now showing up on the. I want to make sure it stays where it's supposed to be, which is 8 points times 1 times 100 equals $800. There we go. That's a little better. Get it out of the way of our max gain. We're bearish. Anytime we have a choice to sell the stock, so whenever you're selling stock, you are bearish, meaning, in terms of this relationship to the break even, we want the stock to go below that. As we said, people don't do things to break even. Now here you're hoping the stock goes all the way to 0. That would be wonderful, right? So the maximum gain, there's a lot of ways to think of the maximum gain. One way to think about the maximum gain is strike price less premium to 0. That's one way to think about it, or break even to 0, or break even, but however you get there. The best case is I get the stock out of the trash can and I stick it to somebody at 110. Right? So my maximum gain, a lot of ways to think about that, is when the stock goes from the break even, in this case 102, to 0. In this case, that's 102 to 0. And so that would be, my max gain would be 10,200. And again, we wouldn't ask you to come up with either. It's going to be one or the other, right? One or the other. Yeah, let's put that in green because it's a gain. And so that's our max gain. And so let's review. Break even is 102. We are bearish. Max loss is the premium. Max gain is when the stock goes from the strike price less the premium to 0. All right, so let's look at our next one. We're just reviewing our strategies here. These are our 4 basic strategies. And again, what I like to do is I like to underneath that put what am I looking at? What I'm looking at is an obligation to buy the stock at the strike price. And then what I like to do is get myself oriented on my matrix. In terms of my matrix, where am I at in my matrix? I'm over there, right? I have, anytime, by the way, I'm buying the stock. I'm bullish, right? Anytime I have this buy. Now, remember, I don't have to say short on the exam. I could say seller. I could say writer. I could say a lot of things. And even if I'm wrong about the stock, I have a little bit of a cushion here. So as long as it stays above my cushion, the same break even, by the way, the break even is strike price plus premium. So the break even is still 102. It's just a matter of where you want this to be in relationship to that break even. Now that's what the difference is. So let's put that in there. Our break even is strike price minus premium equals break even. BE means break even. In this case, the strike price is 110 minus the 8 equals the break even of 102. Maximum gain. Well, at some point, I'm hoping you're not struggling. That anytime you collect money, the best case is you agree to be a potential victim. Nobody victimizes you, and you walk. If Apple's 110 or higher, the contract expires. P.S. I had a client. His name is Mark, and I maybe told you the story, but this is kind of foolish. I tried to get Mark. We shorted a bunch of puts. And I said, Mark, let's at least buy some lower strike puts just in case it blows up and somebody sticks it to us. We can stick it to the next guy. But if this goes down, once it goes past here, we're going to have a problem. The worst case, that stock goes to zero. The worst case is somebody makes me pay 110 for stock that is worthless. So that's my worst case scenario, is I end up paying $110 for stock that is worthless. I say, man, you're the guy who sticks it to me. I'm the putee. If we're going to have putters, we got to putees. I say, you're making me pay, 110 for worthless stock. It's worthless. He said, yeah, I just got it out of the trash can. And he said, but you get to keep the 8. So my maximum loss, let's put that in here, is, again, you can think of this as strike price less premium to 0. Or you can think of this as strike price less premium all the way to 0, or break even to 0, or however you want to think of it. But in terms of what's going on here, the max loss is $10,200. That's an awful color. Let me get a different color. When the apple goes from 102 all the way to 0. And we said we are bullish in our maximum gain. At some point, you shouldn't be struggling with max gains and short option positions. The best case, I agree to be a potential victim. Nobody victimizes me, and I get to keep the premium. So it's the premium, which in this case is 8 points or $800. All right, so that's our fourth of our basic option positions. The fourth of our base option position. We're just going through these things, giving some working models so you can set them. But like I say, you can always stop before you see it, and we do it. You could hit the stop button, hit the resume button, and you could be trying to demonstrate your prowess or lack thereof on these questions. Okay, so I have shown you thus far. This one. I showed you this one, then I kind of hinted that we might want to consider a credit call spread. It's a little smarter, but I'm going to show that to you again. So I actually showed you that along the way. Showed you that. And so now I'm going to show you straddles and spreads. As we said, this was lecture 4. That was the last lecture. And then after I show you that, I'll show you lecture 3. So that's where we're at. Straddles and spreads. So, again, here's the matrix. The matrix works for all these speculative positions. So there's a long straddle. That's what we're straddling, and is the strike price line. Right. And we have short straddles. I'm going to show that to you. Those where straddles look like in relationship to the matrix. All right. So again, I think these are pretty straightforward on the test, but I always like to say, okay, what am I looking at? I'm looking at a choice to sell the stock at the strike price. That's what that is. And I'm looking at, let me get I have also here a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. Come on. So that's what that looks like. And, what I did here is I paid 8 for the call, and I paid 8 for the put. So I'm out of pocket 16. So the way we calculate the break evens, as you recall from lecture 4, is we combine the premiums and we add it to the call to get our upside break even. We subtract it from the put to get our downside break even. 110 minus 16, probably should use my calculator. Let me get my calculator. My arithmetic is terrible, and you don't want to be missing questions because of arithmetic. 110 minus 16 My downside break even is 94. Nobody does things to break even. So test question number 1 is, can you identify that as a straddle? Test question number 2 is, can you calculate the break evens? We've got our 2 break evens. Where is it profitable? We got a great mnemonic for profitability in straddles, great mnemonic for profitability in straddles. And that is silo, short inside, long outside. If we're short the straddle, we want it to be in between these 2 numbers. But if we're long the straddle, we want it outside of these 2 numbers. So the straddle is profitable above 126 if Apple goes above 126, or it's profitable below 94. And then the last test question is, when do we use a straddle? We use a straddle, we buy a straddle when we expect volatility. So I'm not sure if Apple's going up or Apple's going down. I just think it's going to move. So I think they're pretty straightforward on your test. Can you identify it? Can you calculate the break evens? Can you determine where it's profitable? When do you use it? Now, straddle with different strike prices is called a combination. You wouldn't do anything different. You would just, go ahead and do this. So this is a straddle. We've calculated the break evens. We've determined where it's profitable outside, and we use it when we expect volatility. So pretty straightforward. All right, well, here's that spread again I showed you. Here's that spread again we showed you. So spread, first thing you have to do is identify the spread. The spread is long and short, the same type of contract. Long and short, the same type of contract. We said the next thing you got to be able to do on a spread is identify it as either being a debit or a credit spread. A debit or a credit spread. A credit is more money out. Credit is more money in than out. And remember, a debit is more money out than in. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to net the premiums. We're going to net the premiums. And, you could use dollars out or pluses or minuses. I'm using, because of the space here on the whiteboard, I'm using a plus or minus what would, instead of Dean's dollars out, dollars in, but same deal basically. And so that's important. That's important that we get this number right? Because when we collect money, folks, let's just hit this over here. We've determined here that this is a credit spread, because we got more money in than out. And once we do that, we know that in a credit spread, we want the contracts to expire so we can keep the money, right? So if these contracts expire, if Apple's 110 or lower, we get to keep the money. Hardest part to get, don't need to get it. We want the difference in the premiums to narrow. What we're spreading is the difference in the premiums. I want to be able to close this out and make some money. That's what I want to be able to do. So good news. Once you get credit, expire, narrow, right? Those always go together. So there's no circumstance on the exam where you wouldn't tell me this. I mean, that's how that always goes. If it was a debit, it would be debit, exercise, widen. And we have our max gain, because we know that anytime we collect money, the best case is we keep it. And we said that the gain and the loss, always equals the difference in the strikes. It always equals the difference in the strikes. And so here, the difference in the strikes is 10 points. And so we said there's a couple ways to proceed here. One way to proceed, which I think is a mental mess, is you can memorize that the maximum loss in a credit spread is the difference in the strikes, 10, minus the net credit, 6, for 4. I personally think that's a mental mess. I think it's easier to just say, okay, well, there's 10 points to be made or lost. That's the whole point of a spread, by the way. And of that 10 points to be made or lost, I've collected 6. I just think that's an easier way to go. But however you get there, you need to get there. That's not right. P.S. As we said, it would be bad form to take any 2 numbers that don't add up to it. I mean, we said this about a floor and a ceiling. So we put in a ceiling here at 120. We said we want to play between here and there, and then we don't want to play no more. Now, of those numbers, remember, we have collected of these numbers 6. There's our credit, right? And there's our max gain. In between these two numbers, by the way, we don't make the entire 6. To make the entire 6, it's got to be down here. And then here's our loss. And we said whatever the gain and the loss are, those numbers always add up to the difference in the strikes, because that's the whole point of a spread, is saying I want to play between 110 and 120, and then I don't want to play no more. So we've identified it as a spread. We said it's a credit spread. Therefore, we want contracts to expire. We want the difference in the premiums to narrow. We've determined our gain or loss. We got to do our break even. Our break even is either going to use cal or push. If it's a put spread, it would be put subtract from the higher. This is a call spread. And so that stands for call add to the lower. And so we're going to take the lower strike, which in this case is 110. We're going to add the net premium of 6, and we're going to get our break even of 116. You know, nobody does things to break even. Nobody does things to break even. And let's just clean this up here a little bit. I think the text is a little cleaner. So let's do it with text. So we're going to take the 110, which is our strike price, plus our net premium, which is 6. And we get our break even of 116. So the lower strike plus the net premium equals our break even. And the last thing we got to be able to do is determine whether it's bullish or bearish. Where do we want the stock to be in relationship to this number? Where do we want the stock in relationship to the number? And remember, the larger premium dominates the position. The larger premium dominates the position. So this 8 is what's dominating the position. And therefore, this is a bearish spread. We want Apple to be below 116. There's our break even, by the way. Test taking trick. The break even's got to be somewhere between those two numbers, somewhere between those two numbers. Okay, so I've now shown you this, showing you that, 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 right? So this is just our quick review of lecture 2, lecture 4, and lecture 3 with working models of things you're held accountable for. And so remember, the last thing you're held accountable for are the stock positions plus the option positions. This is lecture 3. A covered call, a buy right, a protective put, and a protective call. So on a covered call or buy right, what is the break even? This is the one time and the one time only, the one time and the one time only. You have a option position, a call position. You're not adding, you're actually subtracting. And so the break even in a covered call is the stock cost. Let me give me a bigger font here. Let's get a different color. The stock cost minus the premium. So that's a little different, and that equals the break even. So here, our stock cost, we paid for the Apple 106. I'll put that in red. Minus, we brought in for the option. We brought in for the option 6. Or excuse me, 8. And so our break even is going to be 98. So there's our break even. By the way, if you get good at the T, which I'm hoping, you keep trying to work on the T. I hope, if you get good at the T, you know that whatever they offer you as a break even on your exam has got to be a number that if you plug it in there would make the columns balance, because that's what break even is. Same dollars out as dollars in. So, if you can get good at contract specifications, you're not struggling that what that is. And by the way, I didn't follow my own convention. Now let me do that. So this is a obligation to sell the stock that I actually own. That's an entirely different proposition. That's an entirely different proposition. Anyways, if you get good at the contract specification, you're not struggling with that contract specification, and you can track money, you're in pretty good shape. You're in pretty good shape. All right, so the maximum gain, that's testable because you don't participate past the strike price. You said you would sell the apple at 110, and so, that's as good as it gets. That's as good as it gets. You don't participate past the strike price. Another way to think of that, by the way, is the most you can make is the 98 to the 110. The break even, another way, let's just put that in here. Let's get this also a different color. Is the most you can make is the break even to the strike price. Here, the break even is 98, and you got to give up that stock at 110. And so the most you can make is that 12 points. So, there are a couple ways to think about that. I wouldn't get too much and worry about too much about the numbers. The main point is to understand that you don't participate past the strike price. And that's the downside of this strategy. The downside of a covered call is that you don't participate past the strike price. All right. So that was option 7. And so here's our 8. Again, before I don't follow my convention, man, the matrix doesn't work on these ones, so be careful. The matrix doesn't work on these. But again, what I like to do is say, okay, what am I looking at? I'm looking at a choice to sell the stock I own. That's an entirely different proposition. And so that's what that contract specification is. And my break even, again, you can either memorize stuff or you can use your T, but however you want to get there. But here, the break even is going to be the stock cost, which in this case is 106 plus what I paid for the protection. And so that's going to be my break even. So let's put that in there. This is the one time, by the way, the one time and the one time only that I have a put, and I'm not subtracting because this is not a put position. So it's stock cost plus the premium, the cost of that insurance, that equals the break even. That equals the break even. So that's the one time and the one time only that I'm adding to do that. So that's the break even there. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this to protect against a big price decline. Here I asked you the max gain. The max gain is unlimited because you don't have to sell if you don't want to. But let's go ahead. I wouldn't feel good if I didn't do the max loss on this one because that's what is why you do this. You do this to put in a floor. All right, the max loss here is anytime I want, I can exercise my put contract and I can sell the stock at the strike price of 105. Kind of cool, right? So now the worst case is, and let's just get this in here. Is the worst case now is I'm going to stick it to somebody at the strike price. And so my maximum loss is 4 points. That's pretty cool. So 109 to 105. So, I have the ability to participate in a big price increase, but not participate in a big price decline. So let's put that in there. The max loss is the break even to the strike price. This was a protective put. Okay, so that was option 8. We said you're held accountable for 9. This last one, the last one here is just a recognition thing. You don't actually have to do any T's. And then I think in lecture 3, I went through all the T's with you. I did everything. But the main point here is just recognition. And so, here, if I just sell short this Apple stock at 106, and that's all I do. Let me get my pen out. I'm going to bring in 106 from selling the stock I don't own. Now, the problem, remember, is what I want to do is sell high and buy low. That's what I want to do. But hedging isn't what about I'm right. Hedging is about what is I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, there's a finite supply of Apple, potential infinite demand. And so if I'm wrong, I'm really going to be in trouble here. And so what I would want is to be able to do the offset. So, what I did when I do an opening sale, right, that's what I did here. That's how you establish a short position. And so what I'm interested in being able to do is do a closing purchase on this short stock position. I want to have a choice to close this thing out. And so knowing that the offset is going to be purchasing the stock, right? If I sell the stock, sell it high, then I got to buy it back. And so once I know that I'm looking to do something that ends up with me buying the stock, right, I kind of get a 50-50 here. Because, I don't want to sell the stock. I've already done that. I don't want to have an obligation to buy. Here I have a choice to buy. Here I have a choice to sell. I've already done that. So now I got a 50-50. Now I have a 50-50. And here I have, let's just put next to this what this is. This is a choice to buy the stock. Let me a smaller font. Let me get a different color. So that's a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. And this is an obligation to buy the stock at the strike price. And so what gives you more protection? An obligation or a choice? By the way, this is pretty smart because I no longer have unlimited risk, because if I do this, anytime I want, I can buy back the borrowed stock. And so the answer is A. A choice is always better protection than an obligation. Always better protection. All right, so I showed you the 9 positions. Hope that was helpful. Who knows what we'll do next, but that's just a quick overview of that. So I think we came in about an hour. So obviously we spent 8 hours on the lectures. This just was an overview of the 9 strategies you're held accountable for.